In war, resolution. In defeat, defiance. In victory, magnanimity. In peace, goodwill. That was once stated by a famous human leader during one of humanity's most troubling times. Humans. The word itself conjures up many feelings across our galaxy's myriad races. A diverse race, dynamic and adaptable. Warbringers, despoilers, renegades, peacekeepers, enrichers, and allies. All of these terms come to mind when dealing with humanity. Humans, according to our studies and their own anthropological and archaeological and fossil records, shows that they were a species born from near extinction, and their own genome reflects this in a nearly 100% genetic differentiation between all individuals. An analysis of their genome and development as a species reflected a near exponential change due to this bottleneck effect in their species' infancy. As a result, their species became incredibly efficient at adaptation in harsh environments, and as a result, they outcompeted or absorbed all competing hominids in their respective niches. They are the last sapient hominid species on their world. They are a race born from the absolute need to thrive, adapt, and change. Within 50,000 solar cycles, they achieved wonders. Mathematics, culture, languages, religions, and technology, many times driven by conflict and war. Within 20 solar cycles of the first atomic reaction, they soon had achieved spaceflight and grasped relativity. Within 70 solar cycles of their first atomic reaction, they had an information system network across the globe and had begun forays onto other planets with drone and satellite technology within their solar system. Within 90, they had achieved the first sustainable nuclear fusion reaction and unified theory of particle physics. This was when our species, the Kala, approached them. They were genuinely pleased, but not surprised, at finally making contact. Our presence on the planet provoked many questions from humanity in all aspects, within science, religion, and politics. But our presence on their planet was not to extend a warm greeting into the intergalactic community. It was a warning. Their world was caught in between what was known as the Marigno line, between the Azari Alliance and the most sacred Hurehan Homogeny, a collection of races banded under what could best be described as a technocratic caste theocracy. The Hurehan, a race which had become one with its own machines and directed its lesser races and castes according to its divine dictates, had been at cold war with the Azari and Kala for considerable time. We came to warn humans that we were not the only ones seeking the Sol system, and we had given them the benefit of the doubt in warning them ahead of time concerning the political situation that their planet had found themselves in. If there is one thing that can be said about humanity, it is that they are fiercely based individuality. This individuality can manifest itself in its myriad extensions such as nationalism. Humans, while advanced, were highly united, not unlike our species, which was born from breeder facilities to create individuals suited for places in the overall meritocracy of the Kala. They debated on what action should be taken in their international institutions. But this was their undoing. While deliberations went on between nations, the Homogeny, seeing that the Alliance had extended its hands to the human primitives, decided to make a show of force on the humans, and initiated a shock and awe against the humans. This was not based on any ill will to the humans. Instead, this was to make an example of any primitive species who treated with their rivals. Using powerful solid-state light-directed energy, Ural and cast weapons, they vaporized several urban centers across the world on major continents. They then proceeded to land Hudson caste troops onto their continents, who, despite receiving considerable resistance from terrestrial military forces, despoiled their capitals, razed cultural icons and wonders, and destroyed various sacred sites from humanity's religions, and forced their leaders to burn their flags and standards before them, and executed anyone broadcasting against their actions. The Homogeny, in its arrogance, left humanity after destroying a third of its population and leaving much of the world a ruined, scarred mess in the wake of its occupation. The Galactic Council denounced the Homogeny's actions on multiple levels, but much like the Earth's own United Nations, such things were poor conciliation for the billions that had suffered and died. The humans, however, much like a black hole's event horizon, are not to be crossed for fear of not returning to tell the tale. The Alliance reached out the beleaguered planet, but the humans refused on the basis that the Alliance had done nothing to diplomatically check the actions of the Homogeny or reacted with force for the transgression. The humans had, in fact, captured a Homogeny ship after downing it using conventional missile ballistic weaponry. The ship, among millions, was considered a disposable weapon by the Uralitan caste, expendable and easily replaced, and thus they made no effort to destroy the craft, or it was, at least, well hidden by the humans who had captured it. While the humans had long grasped the concept that space-time was fluid and could be warped for faster travel across vast distances, the technology was long out of their grasp. The ship provided them the missing link. This, linked with a primitive sustainable fusion reactor and astrogational computation machines, could create the means to begin what they described as faster than light. The solid-state light weapons, while requiring greater expertise than the humans had, served as basic principles for their shield projectors and active camouflage, something that the Homogeny, in its arrogant power projection and religious orthodoxy, refused to use. Within 100 solar cycles of the Homogeny's strike on the human homeworld, the attack had a transformative effect on the entirety of the species. All aspects of their culture reflected unity at every level. Government, military, science, and even religion formed from what was originally Catholic Christianity. Out of the ashes of old world nations came the United Federation of Earth. Reaching out into their solar system, entire moons and the asteroid belts were stripped down for ore and fuel to power their expansion, with shipyards based outside of the moon Titan. They soon began forays out of their solar belt and onto other worlds, using them as bases for shipyards and training facilities. The Council was somewhat taken aback by the blatant power projection of the nascent humans and requested that they scale back in the face of what appeared to be mobilization for war. The humans, having been well accustomed to well-meaning but ultimately inefficacious bureaucrats, politely declined their requests on the basis that they were attempting to defend themselves from an increasingly hostile galaxy and power blocks within the various arms of the Milky Way. The Homogeny, looking to the humans for coming back from such losses with such explosive pomp, became perturbed for what they considered defiance at best, and heresy at worst from the humans in their challenging of their infallible logic, that humans should have submitted themselves to Homogeny rule in the face of their terrible power and their own near extinction. The Homogeny then remembered that human being success and ability to adapt was caused indirectly by near extinction and competition with other beings. Their logic, which had dictated much of their actions, foresaw that the humans only responded to and with force, and sought out to complete its neighbours in their niches, just as they had in their evolution, and thus must be eradicated for the greater good of the galaxy, should their civilization stand the test of time. The Homogeny declared a jihad against the upstart apes and their systems and colonies. Arrogantly, their flotillas and battle groups entered into human space only to be endlessly harassed by drone fighters, launched from carriers using hard light active camouflage, picking off their ships, little by little. But the homogeneous fleets remained undaunted in the face of what they declared as dishonourable and illogical conduct on the field of battle. Why would a fleet simply retreat rather than face the enemy? Overextending itself from its battle group, and driven by the infallible direction of their calculations, the second flotilla entered space above the world of Alpha Centauri, known for the finest human shipwrights and military shipyards. Expecting to engage a cobbled-together force of human civilian vessels, they found themselves cut off from the rest of the fleet, and engaged with a well-drilled human fleet less than a third of its size. The human fleet hailed the ships, stating that the flotilla, if it did not leave human space, would be given no quarter by defensive forces. The flotilla, letting logic guide their actions, believed that this was the perfect opportunity to teach the humans of the strength of their arms and convictions. A human general once said, "Keep your faith in God, but keep your powder dry." Well accustomed to power projections and shows of force, the Homogeny believed that they could claim an easy victory through simply giving off the impression of force and trust in the inscrutable logic that guided them. They were wrong. Using kinetic electromagnetic mass drivers, the human ships tore into the hulls of the Homogeny's fleet, whose solid-state light batteries were ineffective against the human shielding, whose wavelengths harmonies were calibrated for the direct energy weapons frequency. With the second flotilla completely obliterated, the remaining groups of the first and third flotillas pulled out of human space for the time being, decrying the humans to the Council for the use of weapons and tactics not allowed under the Council's Accords of War. The Accords were really nothing more than principles used to establish doctrines that justified both the Homogenies and Alliance's standing militaries and sought to protect them from all-out war by making concessions and demands on both sides. The Accords were created so that our declining empires could maintain a monopoly of force over younger races. The humans laughed and stated that their governments had never entered into such accords to begin with and were not bound by them. The Council responded by economic sanctions, but that did little to deter the humans from simply colonizing more worlds and adding to their economic clout. The humans were once again poised to begin outcompeting others within their niche, and this victory proved that the young race were not to be trifled with. Because of this, they found allies in other similarly disenfranchised races who had also been subjected to sanctions and indignities by the Alliance and Homogeny. Emboldened by humanity's victories against a mutual enemy, the races of the Horsak, Rinji, and Calamites embraced the humans and began talks of alliances. The Homogeny renewed its assault with retrofits to its fleets, designed to counter human weaponry and tactics based on their encounters, and pressed its front into human space with considerable success, but soon found resistance from Horsak, Rinji, and Calabai military, mercenaries, and paramilitary forces supplied with human weapons and training on the ground or in space. Humans and their allies had no difficulty to adapting to hostile environments to fight their enemy, and their combat doctrine favoured mobility, stealth, and maneuver warfare rather than the sheer firepower and numerical superiority of the Homogeny fleet. Cultural diffusion among these newfound allies of the humans was near exponential. Where human ships had gained greater astrogation computation and artificial intelligence, the Horsak, a race governed by a strict rule of law, began to embrace human forms of republican constitutional government and underwent dynamic social change. Where humans gained greater infantry technology and mercantilistic tech, the Rinji, a very spiritual species, embraced human religion and began emblazing their merchant, naval and ground forces in human religious iconography and became some of its most zealous followers. Where humans gained greater ship engineering and medical technology, the Calamites, an aristocracy, embraced human arts and sciences, with royalty often commissioning both human scientists and artists to create a synthesis of art and science, music, poetry, narrative, sculpture, and fashion for their houses, leading to a renaissance among their people. This alliance among these people came to be called the Terran Ascendancy, mutually helping each other and raising each other up, spearheaded by the dynamic and adaptive human race. The Alliance was, to say in the least, not pleased with this new turn of events. While not overtly hostile to the UFE or the races of the Ascendancy, they were not being precisely friendly with the humans in terms of trade or diplomacy, as a new power block created new challenges for our alliance, built on protocol and used to the status quo and comfortable position as one of the galaxy's prominent nations. Our actions could have been described as aloof at the time. We were content to watch this young race and its allies spar with the Homogeny, and in hindsight, this too was foolish. Our relationship soured with the humans after a particularly bad diplomatic summit between the Azari and the UFE ambassadors, in which accusations of enabling genocide, duplicity, and diplomatic negligence were thrown between the various races. The Homogeny was having considerable but Pyrrhic successes against human forces, and thus it seemed, however unwillingly, we might be dragged into the midst of the conflict so as to prevent the Homogeny from overstepping its boundaries. But once again, we underestimated the humans. Outside of an important data hub and holy site for their people, Indicator 3, a fleet of what appeared to be human warships walked in on the outer edge of the system, responding to the threats. All the Homogeny flotilla found was empty hulls laden with nuclear warheads, which detonated upon scan, surprising a section of the flotilla and destroying a third of it, and leaving the rest damaged or disabled due to electromagnetic pulses and in complete disarray. The real fleet had walked in around the planet's 2 moons, and using the moon's mass shadow combined with active camouflage to hide its radar signature, proceeded to sabotage the satellite and orbital data nets using modified Ringi comms jammers, with the disorganized flotilla rushing back to the system as fast as they could to plug the hole in their defenses. The key to this stealthy approach was the combined efforts of advanced Horseshock astrogational computations and advanced stealth hull profiles created by joint efforts of Alpha Centauri engineers and Calamite shipwrights. Thrown into disarray, the human fleet turned its kinetic mass drivers onto strategic orbital defense sites, leveling the Silicon military facilities into a fine sand. Using tactics which were considered extremely unorthodox, the humans dropped their forces and air drones via orbital pods, like bolts from the sky. The drop pods were power-armoured infantry units specifically designed by human and Ringi land warfare technicians for orbital insertions, and when combined with conventional armour and infantry elements, close air support drones and kinetic bombardment made what was aptly named a blitzkrieg, or lightning war in their tongue. The Hudson class defenders, who had become accustomed to human tactics which favoured manoeuvre warfare, stealth and evasion, were completely caught off guard by the shock tactics employed by human drop troopers, and were subsequently annihilated by the humans, or committed seppuku, in face of their dishonourable and illogical rout at the hands of a force made of primitives. Within 3 standard Earth hours, the planet's data lines, logistical centres, communication hubs and urban centres were secured, with the planet's leadership, the majority of which were the Rattan, the highest technician priest caste, held hostage. The human occupation then uploaded a self-replicating computer virus and advanced Horseshock AI software, known as a worm, into their sacred network hubs, further throwing the Homogeny across all of its systems, fleets and garrison wells into utter chaos. The flotilla, arriving moments after the events, could not do anything as the system, and even the Homogeny as a whole, were now held hostage by the humans, and was quickly subdued by the human fleet. In a seemingly ironic twist of fate, the Homogeny found itself at the mercy of the primitives. But it was not a cruel occupation. The humans worked to establish state-of-the-art Calamite-adapted medical facilities and disaster recovery for anyone who had been wounded, and did not kill or harm any non-combatants to the best of their abilities, as they refused to mirror the Homogeny's tactics. In return for a purging code for the malicious software, the humans demanded an immediate ceasefire of their jihad and a recognition of human sovereignty in the Milky Way. For the Homogeny, this bitter defeat at the hands of their enemy was both a lesson in logic and humility. They reasoned that the humans should have exacted an equal or proportionate response to their attack, but did not out of what could be considered the alien concept of ethics and morality. To them, at least. And moreover, their calculations were no longer infallible guides for their people as a divine mandate, as their dependence on the divining computations that guided them was now shown to be vulnerable. They were wrong about the humans, that despite being born from near extinction and having a penchant for competition and violence, were capable of mercy and ethics, even in the face of a genocidal conflict and near extinction. As one of their leaders put it succulently, humanity is a riddle, wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. The humans continue to surprise us in terms of their societies and oftentimes conflicting values that remain as a united species. Humans have demonstrated time and time again that they are more than ready to meet the challenges that life, and even the galaxy, throw at them, and then throw it back twice as fast out of the end of a mass driver. I simply pray that I do not have to catch whatever they decide to throw back.